Welcome back to another episode of Shrink Wrapped on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock in the very hot state of Texas is where I am. So if you see me start melting, you'll know that it's about 135,000 degrees outside with about 80% humidity. Not really quite that hot, but you get the drift. It's really hot here, and we've got a hurricane coming in to the coast. And so we want to first and foremost send out some prayers tonight for everybody who's on the Texas-Louisiana coastline. We've got a big one coming. I think it's a Category 3 last I heard. So you guys hunker down, as some people say. You be hunker downers to be safe. Be safe out there. I know Houston does flood a lot, so we're going to be thinking about you guys and those outer bands that are coming through. So anyway, be safe, guys. Don't take anything. To take it seriously. Please take it seriously. And if they're evacuating you, be very serious about considering that, because we do know that particular part of the coastline can get hit pretty hard sometimes with these things. So for all of you out there, again, take care of yourself. Tonight I'm pretty excited to bring to you guys a lady that I know from Canada. And we'll talk about the province or the area. Maybe it's not even a province. Maybe I just already messed it up. But the area in Canada where she's from, we'll have some other people maybe join on and jump on here and might be very impressed with the way I pronounce this. Just saying, some of these people who might jump on here later. But anyway, so all the way from Newfoundland in Canada, please welcome Carol Anstey. Hey, Carol, welcome tonight. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know if Chris is going to be on tonight or not, but I hope that she at least joins in and knows that I said Newfoundland correctly.
Yeah, you did great. You did great.
So tell me, what is it? Is it called a province? Is that what it's called there in Canada?
It is.
Yeah, good.
Actually, yeah, and we're very easterly Canada.
Yeah,
So
you guys are way over toward the coastline, right?
Yep, and we're actually an island.
Yeah.
And we're northeast, so we get cool temperatures. So like you're super hot, we're like heading into fall now. So we're like 20 degrees Celsius, 21. So
right. I think
totally different than when you are.
We're probably about 80 degrees Celsius. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know if you're that.
Yeah, I'm not good at conversions, but it's hot in Texas, Carol. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Wow.
But anyway,
Wow.
I'm saying hello to my wife. Michelle's watching tonight. She's with her father, who's just recovering from surgery, and we're definitely praying for his recovery. So welcome, Michelle, and also Jan Elizabeth is watching. So welcome, ladies. I'm glad to have you on. So Carol, tell us a little bit about where you're from. Kind of what led you to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm from a little small town in Newfoundland. I was born and raised here. Mm-hmm. Now I've moved around a little bit, but predominantly I've lived in this little community most of my life. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're pretty rural. So the community that we live in only has 5,000 people. So we're like a little tiny place.
Wow. I think my daughter's high school is not much smaller than that.
No,
yeah, it's a very
yeah.
to give people a perspective how small that really is. You know, Belton High School I think is like 3,500 kids or something like that.
Yeah, there you
go. Yeah, right.
So it's a small place.
Yes,
we have some bigger places around us, but most of the people in Newfoundland live on the opposite coast to where we live in St. John's, and that's a larger center. And there's about half of the population is out there. There's about 250,000 people there.
Okay,
So yeah, we go to the big city every now and then, and we make lots of trips. Toronto's not that far, and so you know we get off the island and go places. But we're pretty rural. We're pretty small town.
Yeah. Do you know, the older I get, you know, I'm a city person. I've always loved big cities and that kind of thing. But I think the older I get, the more that I appreciate what you're describing. That rural area, just to be out, just that low pace of life. People know each other. There's a community to it, and it just seems very, heavenly, really. You know, your husband.
Yeah, and there is something very unique about Newfoundland. Newfoundland is certainly a culture that's very community oriented and community minded. Like a lot of Newfoundlanders, because we don't have a lot of people here and the economy is not strong, a lot of Newfoundlanders end up going away to work and then they always want to come home.
Yes.
You know, people who are from Newfoundland, they want to be together. So it is very much a community, family. Like even when people come to visit, they want to be around Newfoundlanders. That's like a part
Yeah.
of our culture, a part of what makes Newfoundland
Yeah.
Newfoundland is this close knit
Yes.
sort of community that we have.
Yeah, and I
So
and I feel it. Just getting to know you guys, like I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. I feel that sense of community. And Michelle and I, we're gonna head to Newfoundland one day
awesome.
to be out there. I told your husband Dwayne. I told him, I said, I think there were some pictures or something you guys posted recently. It was sitting around a fire and all this. It just looked
Yeah.
fun. I was like, scoot over, save me a place, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it'd be nice to be
Yeah,
up
lots
in
of
the area.
fires, lots of walks in the woods, lots of
Oh,
time by the
yeah.
river. Yeah,
Yeah, it
that's for sure.
sounds
That's what
so
we
good.
love.
So a lot of people don't know how you and I met. Of course, me being here in Texas and you being in Newfoundland, and it's like
Yeah,
how in the world did your worlds cross? And our worlds crossed, because we went to Nashville. We had a same producer there,
yeah,
and we just with that experience got introduced to each other several years
yeah,
ago, and it's been a really cool relationship and get to know you guys and Krista and her husband, and it's just been a fun connection. So we've known each other
absolutely.
then, Carol, for a couple of years.
Yeah,
When you went, of course, Carol is an author. So she's authored a
yeah,
book, and she's going to talk about that in a second. Krista, of course, recorded her album, which
yeah,
if everybody doesn't have it, you need to get it. And so we'll make sure that we put a link for her album as well. But
yeah,
you wrote a
absolutely.
book, and the thing that
Yeah,
I fell in love with this concept for you guys is because the title, not the title track, but one of the tracks on her album was a song that you guys
yeah,
co-wrote together, if I'm not mistaken,
yeah,
about
that's right.
your testimony.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
talk about that a little bit.
absolutely.
Of how did that concept come about, and how did you guys decide to come up on that? It was because your testimony is very personal, and it's
Yeah.
and so I want you to share what you want to share about that. But the song is beautiful. How did you guys come up to writing that song together?
Yeah, well, Chrissy actually is a spiritual mentor of mine. Her and I became really close,
Mm-hmm.
and I really encouraged her in her music. So I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to, I was a business person. I wanted to help her along with her music. So she did this project and the original project she did in Nashville was a smaller project,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, just some worship music, a piano. Few
Yeah.
piano songs. So
Yeah.
we went out, we had that initial meeting. And then, they sort of talked about doing a larger album and doing some original songs. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was sort of in that full process. Now, the book at
Mm-hmm.
that point wasn't even a part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that together we were going to try to make this CD happen, which we did.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes,
in
you
the
did.
communications and the conversations with Jonathan,
Mm-hmm.
I also ended up doing the book.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sort of started discussing the album and we thought, well, wouldn't it be kind of cool to do the original songs on the album to
Mm.
go along with the book? And the reason why we did that is
Yeah.
because we've done a lot of missions work together. We
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of ministry work together. And often when we would travel to churches and we would share, Krista would sing and then I would give up and stand,
Right.
come forward and give testimony. So
Right.
that was sort of how our ministry was going. So we thought, well, wouldn't it be cool to do these projects alongside of our ministry? So that was sort of how it came to be.
Right.
We co-wrote a couple of songs on the album. Jesus Called My Name, and
Yes.
also Is It All Worth It? So Is It All Worth It is basically my salvation story.
Yes.
So I guess about eight
And
years ago.
and Is It All Worth It was actually the song that she put out as a single before
Yes.
the album came out. So yeah. So
Yeah.
the
And
process.
there's actually a video, and we're both
Yes.
in that video. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that was really cool to do that. We did that in
Yeah.
our hometown,
Yeah.
at the bar that I used to go to. And yeah,
Yeah, so a lot
it
of
was
really reliving that testimony and reliving some of those
absolutely.
memories. And man, yeah, you might want to talk about that here in a second too. So keep going.
Yeah. 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 No, it was really cool. So, So yeah, about 8 or 9 years ago, my husband and my husband grew up in a
Mm-hmm.
Christian home,
Mm-hmm.
and we, I guess, decided that we really wanted a change in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, well, the full story of the testimony is what the book is about. So
Yes.
basically, how my life was before, all of
Mm-hmm.
the situations and circumstances that led me to, eventually giving my heart to the Lord, and everything that changed in our lives and in our family afterwards. So basically, like the short version, I guess,
Right.
was we were going through a lot in our lives. And we had a family. We had 2 children at that time. Now we have 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess things were, we were living a lifestyle where we like to go out and socialize and
Mm-hmm.
party. And, with that came a lot of strife and loneliness. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, I knew I wanted something different, but I always felt like there was something missing. And I really
Right.
didn't know what was missing
Mm-hmm.
until my daughter actually started going to church with her grandmother.
Hmm.
And I just started attending services, and then there was a whole bunch of other things that kind of happened that led me to eventually just surrendering my life and saying, like, I really want something different. Like, I
Right.
don't want to continue on this path. I
Right.
want a
Right.
relationship with Christ. And,
Yes.
the transformation and the way that things went after that was just dramatically different.
Yeah,
Um,
and I like the word, Carol, that you used there, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily hear the word relationship with Christ, and I think what we'll talk about here in a little bit, because I've asked if you would talk a little bit about religion versus relationship, but
Absolutely.
it is that relationship, I think, that makes it such a personal experience, and
Absolutely.
when you have that personal experience, that's what brings you in, right? It's not the religion, it's not all these other things that I think people equate with that, but it's that relationship. And for a non-believer, that relationship is what's the hook, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think for me, especially growing up in a small town, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but in a small community, there is a big division between,
Right.
say, churchgoers
Oh yes.
and
Yes.
religious people, and then people who don't go to church.
Right.
So I always
Right.
sort of
So the
put
people who go to church and all
concept.
the people we pray for.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly, right?
Exactly. Right.
So, I was the one that they were praying for on
Right.
Sunday. Like, my dad
Right.
owned, the video store next to the church where, like,
Mm-hmm.
if you found yourself in there on Sunday, like, you weren't going to heaven. You know what I mean? Like, it
Exactly.
was,
No, you were going
so
home to watch a movie.
yeah, exactly. Right.
Right.
So I definitely think in our small community, there was definitely a lot of religion.
Right.
And that was the concept that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of thought, like, I don't want to be a part of that. But it wasn't until I had a real life experience
Yes.
that I wanted the relationship. And
Right.
I
Right.
realized that, like, this is a real thing. This is not
Mm-hmm.
like about going to church on Sunday and,
Right.
like, appearing to be perfect.
Right. Right.
This is actually, a relationship that changes who you are,
Mm-hmm.
fills what you're missing,
Right.
and actually leads you into your best life. And that's
Right.
why I called the book Called to His Purpose,
Right.
because that personal relationship
Yes.
is what changes your life.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
once you understand that, it's a completely different thing.
Right.
It's
Well, it
it's not
became.
about church.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I think for me, for sure, it became a very personal thing. So when you go to church, or when you're brought up in church, because I was brought up in church as well, and
Right.
it was just the thing that you did. It's what it was expected. And on Sundays you went to Sunday school,
Absolutely.
you went to church, and then on Sunday nights you went to youth choir in church again. Then on Wednesday nights you went to
Mm-hmm.
prayer meeting in church again, and it was just not a bad thing. I'm saying that's a good thing actually. But when
Absolutely.
you're brought up with that, it becomes just a rhythm. It becomes just what you're supposed to do. It becomes very routine. And
Yeah.
so you don't really realize, I think, until later on in life, that the relationships that you build and the relationship that is built within you for Christ through that is
Good.
really that's really what the church is about. It's not about the rules as much as it's about that relationship. Rules are there just to give us guidance, right?
100%.
Right, and what we
And,
strive for, and what we want to do. I mean, that because that becomes a part of your worship. Actually, is to be able to do that. But that relationship pulls you in.
yes. Yeah. And like being obedient to Christ
Hmm.
comes from having a love for Christ
That's
because
right.
of what he's done for you.
That's right, and that
And
comes with the
when you,
relationship.
yes, exactly. And it's also about grace, and it's also about understanding that you're accepted and you're loved for who you are. Because I
Hmm.
think religion
Hmm.
is damaging, whereas relationship is life-giving. So
Yes.
when you're always trying to be something, you don't fully understand the grace that God gives us. God meets
Right.
us where we are. He doesn't expect us to be perfect.
Right.
He he comes into our lives, and when you're trying to be perfect, you're
Hmm.
not coming from a place of, you want to please God because you love him because he loved
Right.
you.
Right.
You're trying you're trying within yourself to be something that
Right.
oftentimes I think can be damaging to people.
Yes. We have a couple of other people coming on, so I want to say hello to Louise Neighbors and Michael Taylor. Hello, Michael. Jennifer Stevens. Lachlan is on with us. Hey, Jennifer. And Krista Noble is on with us tonight. So, hey, guys,
Hi.
welcome. And I think we've been talking about with Carol is just kind of what led her into to her journey with Christ and the album and the book that she's written called His Purpose,
Yeah.
and just how she and Krista's ministry started, but really most importantly at this point, just Carol's testimony. And Carol, you've been talking about a little bit of on relationship versus religion, and I don't know if
Yeah.
maybe for a second you might want to talk a little bit more about what you mean with religion and relationship. You had just, right there begin to start talking about religion can be damaging, but relationship can be the loving part. I can't remember exactly what you said,
Yeah.
but talk about that a little bit more and describe to the people who are listening what you believe the difference between the religion and the relationship is.
Yeah. So I basically said that religion can be somewhat damaging,
Right.
whereas relationship is life giving.
Life giving.
So
Yes.
I think it comes down to the personal experience
Hmm.
of um, your relationship with Christ. So when you're trying to fit a mold of going to church and
Right.
looking a certain way and being a certain way and just following rules, you
Hmm.
kind of miss
Hmm.
the important part, which is the relationship with Christ. Like, I
Hmm.
love church, I love going to
Hmm.
church, I love my
Hmm.
church family, but at the end of the day, what I really love is my relationship with Jesus.
Right.
And I think it's so important to always keep that in the forefront.
Hmm.
And I think the difference is when we're always trying to live up to religion,
Right.
we never achieve that.
Right.
But when we love Christ,
Hmm.
we're motivated from a place of wanting to have a relationship with him. And it's a
Yes.
completely different motivation. It's a completely different
Yeah. And,
experience.
and when you agree that when you have that motivation, when you have that relationship with Christ, then the religion that you choose to follow takes on a whole new meaning, and you begin to start wanting
Absolutely.
to fulfill some of that, whether it's a Baptist religion or a Methodist religion or whatever religion it is that you're following under the Christian umbrella, of course. That relationship is what really kind of strives you to strive for that guidance or that sense of structure that the religion then brings, and so I think the
Yes.
relationship is it's critical. It's critical.
Yeah, because you want to be obedient to
Right.
Christ. And, you know, when you are, and when he only wants the good things for us in life. So
Right.
if he's pulling us away from certain things, it's because he knows that those things are damaging to us.
Right.
And when we trust him, and when we know that he loves us,
Hmm.
and we have that faith that he wants the best for us, then
Hmm.
it doesn't become about just following the rules. It becomes about, okay, if you want me out
Right.
of this situation, it's because you know me and you know that this is what's best for me. So
Right.
I'm
Right.
going to be obedient to what you want for me because
Right.
I know that you know best. I know that you know better than I do.
Yes, and then the religion part of it gives you that guideline, the step by step instructions of how to accomplish some of these things. So Louise
Yeah.
Neighbors, one of my friends from Belgium, just had a comment. I want to read that too. She says, "Religion is killing our adult children's faith. However, our
Yeah.
relationship with Jesus is everything." Speak to that a little bit. I mean, I think it's an interesting concept, and sometimes I will also say, for example, in my profession as a therapist. Um, when people are in that rule driven kind of thinking, and then they
Yeah.
go to church and there's all these rules that you have to follow, sometimes, not all the time, and this is definitely not about bashing religion, but this is about helping
Of
people
course.
understand where religion has its place in our walk with Christ, right? So, but
Absolutely.
when they go there, what ends up happening is the guilt that they can feel because they're not living up to the expectations of what they
Absolutely.
feel like they need to. So therefore, there's a lot of shaming, a lot of things that they bring on themselves, and so I think for us, it gets back to, okay, what is that relationship like, and know that because you have that relationship, that you're forgiven.
Exactly.
Therein lies the beauty behind that. So
Yes.
talk about that comment, killing our adult children's faith. Religion is killing our
Yeah,
adult
because
children's faith.
I, I, I think for everybody, their relationship with Christ can be a little bit different, how they develop in their relationship, where they are in their relationship. So when we try to just put like a blanket over everybody and say, you have to do this, and I'm not saying it's just like you said, those guidance, those things are there for a
Right,
purpose
right,
because they are the things that are the best for us in our lives.
right,
But at the same time, we also have to understand that when you're in a relationship with Christ, He understands your imperfections.
yes.
He created you that way. Sometimes He uses our imperfections to be our greatest ministry. So the
Well, hence
grace is
called to
what
my,
covers
hence
us.
your book. I mean, that is your testimony, really.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
yes,
So when you have a relationship with Christ, you understand the acceptance part of it.
hmm,
You understand that he knows your weaknesses, and
right,
he gives you strength. He provides
hmm,
the strength for the areas where you are weak,
hmm.
but you don't live under that shame and that guilt
That's right,
because
right,
you're in a relationship with Christ. You know he
right.
loves you. You know he's not looking down on you and pointing a finger. I heard a pastor say
Absolutely.
one time, and it was so true. Before a person is convicted of their sin, they need to understand that there's a savior.
Uh,
And I think in religion, the grace message is sometimes lost, and they don't
yeah,
understand
yeah,
that
definitely.
you know, when you're living in a certain lifestyle, like I know
Hmm,
for me, and I can speak to this from my own experience.
hmm,
I didn't wake up every day and think about all the ways I could offend God. I was just caught up in a lifestyle. I was doing
hmm,
what I thought was right every single day. It wasn't until I got into a relationship with Christ and I thought, you accept me in this mess,
hmm,
that I started to want what was best for myself
hmm.
because I had a relationship with Him and He was
Yes,
accepting and loving. And I thought, if you can take me in my brokenness and love
right,
me and accept me for who I am,
right.
I want to live my best life with your help.
Absolutely. Krista Noble, she says there's a difference between following a religion than being religious. And I think that you're kind of talking about that a little bit. Maybe expand on that concept for a second.
Yeah, well, I think the whole religious concept too is somewhat condemning. And
Mm.
and and
Mm.
we know the Bible tells us that there's no condemnation in Christ. That's
That's
why
right.
again it comes down to a personal relationship.
Hmm.
When we see imperfections in people, we have to understand, like, I'll just take it back to an experience that I had early in my walk with Christ, and I was struggling with some things, and it was like things in people, I guess you could say.
Right.
And I remember reading this book about grace, and I remember hearing the still small voice, the Holy Spirit, say to me, when you see imperfections in people, thank me for my grace.
Mm.
And when we're religious, we're looking at people and we're kind of holding them up to a certain religious standard.
Mm.
But when we understand grace, we understand nobody's perfect.
Hmm.
And we apply that grace to ourselves, and we should apply that grace to others. So being
Right.
religious, I think, comes with a
Right.
lot of condemnation. It comes with a lot of judgment. It comes with a lot of
Yes.
finger pointing, looking down at people. And I don't believe that that's where we're supposed to be as followers of Christ. I think
Right.
we're supposed to be loving and accepting and
Right.
serving people and
Right.
showing people the love of God and how he accepts us where we are
Yes.
and doesn't expect us to be perfect.
You know, one of the theories that I hold to in my clinical practice is rational emotive behavioral therapy, and rational emotive behavioral therapy, ironically, is goes by what I consider to be the golden rules, like do unto others who would have them do unto you. It has this
Absolutely.
that has this concept of unconditional self acceptance as opposed to self esteem, because kind of what you were saying there about the whole idea of being religious and kind of what that mindset is for people. In the therapeutic world, when I'm working with people, we talk about self-esteem. What I help them understand is if we esteem ourselves, then we're placing a value on us, whether it's a good or a high value or a low value, and that we run a risk there, because if we don't see ourselves as having any worth, then we're trying to esteem, and where do we get that? Well, we begin to esteem others, and so when we're esteeming others and they look like they're better than us, then it becomes a
Yeah.
problem. So we talk about the whole concept of unconditional self-acceptance. Then it kind
Yeah.
of it goes forward with that, with unconditional other acceptance, and then
Right.
unconditional world acceptance. And the irony that I'm talking about with this is this theory was it was invented by an atheist. And I had an opportunity. I had an opportunity when I was training with him. It was Albert Ellis, Dr. Albert Ellis, and I had the opportunity, which was incredible, to train in this technique with him himself. And when we started
Right.
talking about this, I challenged him on that a little bit, and he finally was like, "Well, you can believe what you want to believe, but this is my theory." And I was like, "Well, it's a pretty good theory. Sounds
Actually,
really
a
good."
documented theory.
But anyway, so a couple
Amazing.
more people. Amy Beeson, hi Amy, or Amy Mills. You're married. How are you doing? And then also we have I can't see her name, but it's somebody you might know. Miranda Blackmore Adams is on with us
Oh
tonight.
yes,
She's
hi
loving the
Miranda.
conversation, so we want to make sure that
She's one of our sisters.
we give you guys a shout out. So tell us a little bit more, if you don't mind, a little bit more about your testimony and kind of how the song and the book came about.
Yeah. So after we had been doing some ministry together, and we decided that we were going to do this CD project, we sort of started talking about this experience that we had, which is where the song "Is It All Worth It" came from.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a pretty neat story. It was probably a little while after I had given my heart to the Lord, and I felt a pull right away from the lifestyle that I was living.
Mm-hmm.
I really felt like I wanted to be with my family. I didn't want to be out drinking and partying and sort of living that lifestyle anymore. And that was one
Right.
of the very first things that I felt like needed to change in my life. Having said that, probably a little while into my walk, I guess you could say, a bunch of my friends were going, and they were doing a road trip together. And of course, I really felt like this pull, like I wanted to go. I knew I shouldn't, but
Mm-hmm.
it was sort of like this bit of conflict that was going on.
Right. Right.
So anyway, at the time I was selling real estate, and I go to this lady's house, and she takes me all through the house, and we're having this great conversation. Anyway, we get outside, and she sort of just starts pouring her heart out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, I used to be an alcoholic. And she said, I lost my husband, I lost my son. And she said, I was sitting on the floor in my trailer one night, and I thought to myself, is it really all worth it for
Wow.
a good time with the girls to give up my whole family?
Wow.
And when she said it, it just hit me, because I knew that was God speaking to me about the situation that I was
Yes.
being faced with in that moment.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get to the car fast enough.
Almost verbatim too, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
And I was just crying my eyes out, and I was, thanking the Lord. Thank you for showing me,
right,
basically the truth in this situation.
right.
So a couple of years later, Chrissy and I traveled to Fort McMurray, and we're doing ministry there. So I get up and give testimony in this church. And basically, I recanted that story. And I was talking about how lots of times in our walk with God, He asks us to lay certain things down because He wants better things for us. And when we're willing to sacrifice these things in our lives, He just pours in. Anyway, I told this story about what happened with the lifestyle change, and how I felt like God really wanted me to give up
Right.
the drinking. And my husband and I actually poured every bit of alcohol out in our house down the drain. I mean, and it was bottles and bottles. But anyway,
Yeah.
so when the service was over, this lady comes up to me and she just wraps her arms around me, and she's crying and crying. She can't even get it out to me what she's saying. So I just
Wow.
pray for her, and she leaves the service.
Wow.
Later that evening, she reaches out to me and she says that her husband and her were going through this really rough patch, and he had been praying for her that she would kind of lay this stuff down. And he really felt not to tell her anything, not to say anything to her. She came to the
Right.
service, and
Right.
after that night, she just never touched another bit of alcohol, and then their lives
Yeah.
were transformed as a result of it.
Yeah.
So it was as a result of my experience and that experience that we really felt like, this is a message that we want people to know, because a lot of times we just get caught up. Like, people are just living their lives. They're under a lot of stress. They're under a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And then these outlets are just ways that people cope. And it's not that
That's right.
they're constantly wanting to cause damage in their marriages and in their families, but
Right.
it's just the byproduct of their lifestyle. And we just kind of wanted to put
yes.
that out there.
And and a lot of times when I'm working with these kinds of things in the therapy session, I talk about that as it's like for infidelity, for example. Infidelity, many, many, many times, is not about the spouse or the other person. It's about the other person reaching out to try to decrease their own anxiety levels about what they're going through, and they're making really, really poor, bad decisions.
Right,
So that
exactly.
and the same thing with alcohol, same thing with the other things that go on. So I think that what you're on is you're spot on here with what you're saying. I'm loving your story.
Yeah, so so that was where that song came from, and we actually went to the bar where I used to go, and we recorded it, and yeah, it was amazing.
So now
Yeah.
for the listeners, we're going to get to hear Carol sing the song.
No, not not my gift, Jason. Not my gift.
So, well, okay. Well, I tried, Krista. I tried. But anyway, so when Krista was on, she actually was able to sing the song for us. So, guys, go back on the website at jasonpfrancis.com, and you can see her interview and get to hear that song, and of course pull it up on iTunes under Krista Noble, and to hear Krista's voice, which is angelic, may I add. And Krista's laughing at us now.
Yeah.
I tried, Krista. I really did try to get her to sing it, but it didn't work. So, you've had a lot of experiences. A lot of times people, even with me, they'll say, well, why did you do a CD? I mean, what is that all about? And are you going to sell it? Or how's the sales going? And all these things that they say. And, a lot of times I want them to know it's not about selling a CD, or it's not about selling a book necessarily. Really, it's just an opportunity to have a tool for ministry. That's really what it is,
Absolutely.
right? And so when you have
100%.
that, it offers something for someone to take home with them, or it offers them something to refer back to. And it also gives us, by doing kind of what we've done, and being kind of connected to some of the Nashville scene, and kind of open some of those kinds of doors for us to work. It's not about anything other than opening up opportunity and opportunities for us to spread the message. And you had an opportunity to be on the 100 Huntley Street show,
I did.
and you were interviewed by Cheryl Weber. This is really. There's a story behind that. I'd like for the reader, for the listener, the readers, your readers, or our listeners to hear. So, kind of talk about that show experience.
Yeah, so I sent the book in and the CD, and we went through the full process. And so they decided that they wanted to do an interview with us, or about the book. So I go on there and we meet with Cheryl Weber and we do this interview. And actually, the thing about it was we actually had an opportunity to talk with Cheryl for over an hour after the interview was over.
Very cool.
And she said to me afterwards, like, that never happens. That was totally a God thing. She's like, usually I'm booked. I'm just going from one interview to the next. And anyway, Cheryl spoke over my life, and it was amazing. And we made this awesome connection with each other. Funny thing is, they had a power outage and they lost the interview. So it's kind of crazy. But anyway,
a lot of times I'll say, hey, that's live television, folks. However, this scenario, it goes beyond live television. It goes beyond it is like a total glitch, right?
Absolutely. And they've never, in all the years that they've been recording 100 Huntley Street, it was the first time that they ever actually lost footage. They lost, some shows or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I am going to go back and re-record the interview, once everything gets back to normal and whatever. But the thing was, I did make an amazing connection with Cheryl. I also was able to make a connection with a publishing company in Canada, because as you know, cool. In Nashville the last book was produced, and it's a little bit more difficult to break into, and get opportunity and travel, and you have a family and the logistics of all of that. So now I made a connection with a Canadian company, which makes a lot more sense for our ministry and being here in Canada. Right. Cheryl was the one who kind of helped me with that. So, God's in all of it. And
so I think what I'm hearing here, Carol, is that there might be something on the horizon.
Yes, absolutely. I am. I'm praying about and starting to work on another book. One of the things that I always share with people, and I do definitely want to share with people, testimony is powerful. Mm-hmm. And, in the Bible, there's lots of times when Jesus does things for people and he says, go and tell people what I've done for you. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that as a result of people's testimony, that's the seeds that can be planted in people's hearts that, can lead to life-changing experiences. And I just feel that that's what he's called me to do. So the next project I want to work on is, again, more testimony of just different ways that God is real in your life. It's he's not in a box. You don't just pull him out when you have a problem. You don't just, go to him in certain situations. He's there for every situation in our lives, and he wants to walk with us and be a part of our everyday lives. And
it goes back to what you were saying earlier too about relationship. Relationships don't work if you just pull them out every once in a while. And so, it's that ongoing connection, that ongoing relationship that keeps you strong in the faith. When you talk about, testimony, and there's going to be another book of testimonials, a lot of times I've heard people say, well, I don't have a testimony. I never really, I didn't party hardy, or I didn't I wasn't whatever. What do you think about those statements when people come to you and say, "But Carol, I don't have your testimony. I'm not that powerful. I don't have anything I can say." What do you say to them?
Well, you know what? Everybody, I believe, has a testimony, because God's working in every single one of our lives. Right. I think he's there in the little things and he's there in the big things. And, every person who has a relationship with Christ, if I said to you, Jason, what are the things that you're thankful for God for? And you can recant a story. Well, last week I was in this certain situation and I prayed, or this person spoke into my life, or I had this experience. That's all testimony. And that's the stuff that people need to know about, because that's essentially how God is communicating with us, and how he's trying to reach us is through our real experiences. It's just sometimes it's a little bit difficult to connect all the dots. So when somebody can hear your story, oh wow, I just thought that was a coincidence. I mean, how many people do you know that say, oh, I think everything happens for a reason, but yet are they really connecting all those dots? Do they really understand the bigger picture?
Right.
And
It
I think
happens.
testimony can make that real to people.
Yeah, and your own testimony makes it real for you. I mean, and that's like when you say, what are you thankful for? The things that are you thankful for today? And a lot of times, again, I go back to therapy because I'm a therapist. But whenever
Yes.
we talk about these things in session, I'll have them sometimes have a gratitude journal and some a blessings journal. And what is it? Three things. What are three things? Like right now, I got to tell you, I'm pretty thankful for this drink because it's like 120 degrees in my office.
Yeah.
It could be something this small, honestly. It's like it doesn't have to be big, huge or things. It's because it's the small things in life when they all add up show you how big things really can be. And so when you have that and you have that mindset to be thankful for the blessings that you get, that itself then becomes part of your testimony because you can share with people how you live by faith. That's
Absolutely.
testimony, right? And so
Definitely.
I know that you have people all the time come up to you probably and say, well, I don't have a testimony, and what might that be? How do you
Yes.
encourage people to get in touch with that and to get the courage to tell their testimony? Because it can be very exposing for people too.
Hmm.
People don't want to talk about it because it's shameful, or they don't want to talk about it
Yeah.
because it's going to be looked down upon. What words of wisdom and advice can you
Yeah,
give
you know what?
somebody?
It's interesting that you say that. One of the things that I've always felt God speaking to me about is being vulnerable. And
Mm,
I believe that being open and being vulnerable is a way that we
mm-hmm,
connect.
mm,
And God showed me something once, and it was that when you're vulnerable, the heart softens, and that's when the truth
wow,
can get in.
well,
Because
that's some good
it's
words right there. Yeah, it
yeah,
brings us
it's not about
closer.
a concept.
Yeah,
We all can relate to that, right? That's the
right.
human experience. We
That's
all
right.
hurt. We all have struggle. We all have things that are
Yes.
difficult in our lives,
Right.
and we need to be open about how God comes into those situations.
Right.
And by being vulnerable, I know that a lot of people think, well, I don't want to go back to that part of my life, or I don't want to share those things
Mm-hmm.
that I used to do. But that's how God takes the brokenness and he uses it. That's how he makes
Mm-hmm.
it beautiful. And
Yeah.
it's also very healing. And it's also a big encouragement to other people. I mean, Chrissy's
Yeah.
often said to me, you think that sounds a little bit whatever to you, but to me, I think that's so encouraging. Like for you to work through that, I like that. That's so encouraging to people.
So if Chrissy's still watching, Chrissy, I'm gonna start calling you Chrissy now because I feel like I'm getting to know you better. And if Carol's gonna call you Chrissy, I'm gonna call you Chrissy. So should Chrissy be watching still? I love what you're talking about. There's beauty in our brokenness, and there's a lot of times I've had that same mantra in my head over and over and over again. And I've always wanted to write a song about being there's beauty in the brokenness. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of inviting maybe the songwriter team of Carol Anstey and Kristen Noble. Maybe we all put our heads together and write a song about that
That would be
because. Yeah,
awesome.
I would love to do it. So Chrissy says, "Yes, Chrissy." You can call me Jay. Just we'll shorten everything. So yeah, but let's definitely. I'm throwing it out there, Chrissy. Let's write a song about beauty and brokenness. So just let that wrap in your heads, ladies. So maybe that's our
Yeah,
next step together.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, no, and I did an interview on Heart Matters, and that was one of the things that I really felt impressed to tell people. Don't hide behind everything is all perfect now. How can you
Yeah.
really
Right.
with people who are broken if you don't ever show that side of yourself?
That's right. That's
I'm
right.
not saying parade it around, but I'm
Right.
saying God will
No.
give you opportunity. I mean, I can speak into situations because I can look at somebody and say, you know what, I've been there.
Yeah.
I understand.
Right.
And I think that's how God uses us. I think
That's right.
that's a part of what we need to be willing to do because
Hmm.
that's our ministry.
Do you know? Is
The
it
difficult things.
is it strange to you that I'm almost excited about the concept of beauty and brokenness? Not that I want to go out and do something to break myself tomorrow, but just the idea that no matter what I've done and no matter what's been done before, there's still a beauty in
Absolutely.
that, because that shows that vulnerability and that you were talking about earlier, which allows
Absolutely.
that relationship to just occur. And so when we can lay that at the feet of Jesus, and we can lay that there, and we can own that, then it sets us free. That's the part that is
Absolutely.
we're able to just give that over, and boy,
Yes.
can we mold something beautiful out of that experience. And it almost excites me to think about it. Because let me
Yeah.
tell you,
Oh,
I've
yeah.
had plenty of brokenness.
Yes.
So, right.
Absolutely.
So a couple
Absolutely.
more people are joining us. My dad, hey Dad, how are you? Joining us, and also Camille Taylor, a friend from high school. Larry Harmon, another person we know, and David Goodwin. Welcome, David. Nice to see you on here too. Tell John, where's John? You better tell John to log on. Anyway, good to have you guys here tonight. So we're talking with Carol Anstey, who's an author in Newfoundland. Did I say it right again? I'm
You did.
practicing. Who's wrote a book called Call to His Purpose. You can get that book on, Carol, do you have a website that you guys,
I have a Facebook
a
page
Facebook page?
actually, and
Yes.
I do have a website now, but I got to be honest, I'm not overly active on the website.
So,
But I do have a Facebook page, Carol Anstey, author.
yes.
So if anybody wants to reach out to me is interested in a copy of the book, just to be encouraged, it's
Yes.
also very much an outreach tool as
Yes.
well. So yeah, if
Yeah.
anybody's interested, by
And
all
guys,
means, reach out to me.
and I'll tell you, read it. I mean, you're going to be blessed by it. It's very well put together. It's an easy read. It's not so
Yeah,
terribly long that you can't get through it. It's quite frankly, I sat down and read it in an afternoon. I mean,
yeah,
you just kind of want to go to the next chapter, And
yeah.
so it's one that kind
That's
of
what.
keeps moving you along. So I appreciate that. Um, so as we begin to start wrapping up, one of the
Yeah,
things that I think is so important the whole reason I started doing these talks on Tuesday nights is to bring awareness to mental health and mental health through all different kinds of aspects, and of course being a Christian and being in a in the Christian music world as well. I think it joins together beautifully. And so
absolutely.
as you think about what you would want the listeners tonight to hear from you, and how
Yeah.
you maintain your own positive mental health, because we all know we're going through a crazy time. I mean, we're living through what I like to call the apocalypse, but I forget the word pandemic. But but as we leave, what maybe 3 words of advice, or maybe 3 things that you do on a regular basis to maintain your own mental health that you could
Mhm.
encourage the listeners to consider?
Yeah. I'm glad that I was going to do a live devotion. Actually, it was been kind of going around in my head for the last little while. One of the big things I think, Jason, is perspective.
Mm,
Um, my husband has a really good way of grounding me sometimes when I'm
mm,
in certain situations.
mm,
And when we went into all of this, we're business owners, so there's a
mm.
certain amount of fear that goes
Right.
into the unknown. And you get caught up in looking at the news and reading the numbers and trying to get a sense of what's happening in your head. And I sort of had to come to this place where I had to shift my perspective, because I
Mm,
think we all want to grab onto some truth in this situation, and that's difficult.
right.
um, the only thing that we can control is our reaction to the situation that we're in.
Right.
And you know what do we have control over? Well, our own lives, our own families, our
Mm,
own sphere of influence, the situations and the circumstances that we're in. And I think this is a time when we really just need to have that close perspective.
right.
Because if we get caught up in politics, if we get caught up in numbers, if we get caught
That's
up in
right.
policies, that just seems to send us in a tailspin. So I think it's very important to always ground yourself with the right perspective and focus on, okay, what do I control in my own world?
Right.
So I think that's one thing that's very important. I think also gratitude, like what you had
Yeah.
said earlier.
Right. Right.
Thankfulness can push out a lot of negativity in our
Mm-hmm.
lives,
Mm-hmm.
because thankfulness is being thankful for something that, in essence, I don't want to say we don't deserve, but in a way, I guess I am saying that.
Right.
So when we become aware of the things in our lives that we are thankful for, I think it sort of gets us away from the pity party, because we all like kind of live in that right now
Right.
because of the situations and circumstances
Well,
that
and
we're
it's
in.
so easy to let your mind go there when, we're being told to social
Absolutely.
distance and, all these things that we've got going on. So it's easy for us to go there.
Yes. And the third thing I think would be to surround yourself with people that lift you up.
Yeah.
Having your bestie with you.
Yeah.
Like me and Chrissy spent some
Yeah.
time away on vacation together. Like sometimes you
Yeah.
just need that positive influence in
Absolutely.
your life with people that build you up, that you know
Yeah.
are going to encourage you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to have those conversations. You kind of want to beat the dead horse and you want to talk about all the negative things. And you kind
Right.
of can pinpoint those people in your life that you probably do that with. But it's really important to stay connected to people who encourage you and build you
Right.
up.
And that can be the same person. I mean, it can be the same.
Oh, 100%.
And
Yes.
sometimes when it's that same person, it's even better. But you're right. When
Yeah,
you want to go on a holiday together, you don't want to necessarily bring a lot of negativity with you, and you get
absolutely.
back to just having that relationship that we've been talking about, tonight. Integral that the relationship itself, just with Christ, but also within our fellow believers, is that's what rejuvenates us. That's what plugs us back in.
Yeah, and
So
I do like often I'll go for a walk and my husband will say to me, "So you're going for a walk tonight? Are you going with anybody?" I'm like, "Me and Jesus." And
absolutely,
taking that
yeah,
time too, that
yes,
one-on-one quiet time for
yes,
prayer,
yeah,
for listen to worship music, just to kind of shut it all out. I think that's
right.
so important as
A
well.
lot of times people ask me when my quiet time is, and I tell them on I-35, the interstate that I drive every day.
Yeah,
It's talking about me,
absolutely.
talking about taking Jesus with you. I every day, twice a day when I'm on the
Yeah,
interstate. But it's time alone. It's at 45 minutes of just downtime and decompressing, and there's really there's a sense of peace that you can come with that, even though it's a
definitely.
crazy highway. Joan Noble, I want to read her comment that she says. She says, Carol's book is so good for outreach. She delves into the thoughts that keep people from God, people that only think of religion. It can break down the barriers. So, Joan, thank you for the comment
Thanks,
there.
Joan.
That's beautiful. And then also, Lori Ann Blanchard, love all 3 points. She says perspective, gratitude, and people who are uplifting, which I think beautifully wraps up kind of what you've been talking about, Carol. So
Yes.
I thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank
This is fun.
you.
I know we've attempted to do it a couple of times, but the stars kind of all
Yeah.
fell in line. You
We
know.
finally got it
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So thank you so very much, and I so
Thank
appreciate
you.
you and your friendship and your ministry. You've been a great deal of light to me through a lot. So I
You.
appreciate that.
Likewise.
All right.
Likewise.
Well, I will
Thank
talk
you
to you very
so much.
soon. Thank you so much for joining
Yes.
us.
Take care.
All right.
Bless.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining us tonight for this episode of Shrink Wrap. Go to Carol Anstey Author on Facebook. You can get her book called Call to His Purpose. And also reach out to Krista Noble and on her Facebook page if you want to order her album. Guys, you're not going to be disappointed. It's unbelievably good. You'll be blessed by both of these ladies. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next. That's a wrap.